Okay, thanks very much. So I will call this meeting to order, 11:06. And I would ask for a motion to appoint a presiding chair for this meeting, please. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Move Jenna Stoner chair the meeting. And I love that look. Wow, that was a great look.
That's seconded. I'll call the question. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. I will turn the meeting over to you, Director Stoner, to start with the approval of the agenda, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Richmond. We are in the Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District. Item 2, approval of the agenda, please. Moved by Director Jewett, seconded by Director Rainbow. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have 2 delegations today. We'll start with item 3.1. We have Dr. James Cranston coming in talking about the CT scanner. Just give him a moment to join us. Go ahead, Ms. Jewett, do you have a question?
Just that I have to leave for a 12 o'clock meeting. Will there be any issues with quorum?
I think we'll be okay, and we're hoping that this might be wrapped up by then, but I see Tony counting.
Thank you.
We only see 5 of us. Is that enough?
4.
There'll only be 4.
Or is Mike here?
Mike is here and Director Mack is also on the line.
Awesome.
Oh,
Okay.
is it? Oh, we're okay.
Yeah.
We're okay.
Thank you. All right, welcome to the meeting, Dr. Cranston. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll turn it over to you for your update in request for funding.
Yeah, that's great. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So this, thanks again for having me. This is a follow-up to the presentation that we gave last year regarding our attempts to get a CT scanner and installed at Squamish General Hospital. To update the group, a feasibility study was undertaken and was completed with a report sent out on March the 7th. A lot of details. It was a several hundred-page report, but to boil it down for this group, the total budget was looking to be approximately $4.2 million, and that was a Class D estimate that was put out by the contractor. Since then, there is a business case is going to be started. So we received an email about a month and a half ago from Carrie Macy, who's the operations director of medical imaging for VCH, saying that she's assembling a group to complete the business case. I haven't had any contact from her in the last month, so I'll poke her again and see what's happening with that. But I did ask her specifically about approaching the regional hospital district, and she said that this would be a good time now so that we could try and get this project put on the budget for the next fiscal year, which is why I'm here today.
Thank you for the high-level presentation. The board, questions for Dr. Cranston? Go ahead, Director Pettingale.
Yes, thank you. Just so, are there any specific timeline commitments, preferably in writing from VCH, around when things might happen, or any idea what their timeline is?
Nothing in writing yet around when that will happen.
Go ahead, Director Rainbow.
So, good morning. Are you asking for the full 4.2 million from us?
No. I'm hoping that you guys have experience with how much the VCH would typically hope that the regional hospital district would provide. I have no experience with that in terms of how much of this project typically gets funded privately or through the foundation or through VCH or through the regional hospital district. But my understanding is that usually some of it comes through the RHD.
Okay. Well, my comment would be that we absolutely need to support this. And I'd like to ask Suzanne if she could give us some sort of information about money available right now and what the impact would be on taxation.
Yeah, and we did increase the tax requisition this year in anticipation of starting to put some dollars away for this particular ask, Dr. Cranston. And I will pass it over to Director LaFrance here shortly to perhaps provide us with some of those numbers. My limited experience in the hospital district and with BCH is I don't think that there's an actual formula in terms of cost breakdowns. I think actually somebody from BCH will be coming to present after you. And I think it really depends on the need, what their priorities are, and then the priorities of the community. And I think in the past, the hospital district has really just been there to really fill the gaps on the things that we see the community needs, but BCH is maybe not prioritizing. Is kind of the sense that I have. I see Director Richmond and then Director LaFrance. I'll come to you if you have some numbers or context that you can add.
Thanks. And my signal's a little choppy, so I apologize if you said it. Mr. Cranston, has there been any appetite or willingness from BCH to fund this in any portion, or are we still looking? Because my next question will be, which has already been identified to Suzanne, what have we already talked about allocating towards this project? I think there's pretty strong general support for this at our table. I think what the board is going to want to figure out is how we make sure that BCH is picking up their fair share of this expense and how we approach that, how we make sure that they understand that it's a priority and a shared priority. So what have we already allocated and what has VCH set up to now, if I've missed that already?
Thanks. Yeah, VCH hasn't told me how much they are willing to allocate, but I do have an understanding, not in written form, that they would be funding part of the project. There seems to be a strong support within VCH for the project. So yes, my understanding is they would be funding a portion of it, but I don't know how much that would be.
Encouraging to hear that they're coming to the table on it at least. Director LaFrance, can I go to you if you have some context in terms of where our reserves sit and what our taxation looks like?
Yes, for sure. Hi, I'm Suzanne LaFrance, the Director of Finance, and currently the Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District reserve budget for capital purposes is about $950,000. And typically with VCH projects that are, VCH driven, we pay 40% of the project, and the 60% is covered by the province. So it's good that VCH is willing to participate. There's always the option of borrowing, long-term borrowing as well.
I think a significant portion of the project would be as well covered by the Squamish Hospital Foundation. I know they already have significant funds put aside. And I think that with a capital fundraising project through them, I can't imagine that we couldn't accumulate millions more fairly easily.
Well, thank you for that context, Director LaFrance, and for correcting me that there is actually a funding formula. Director Jewett, I'll go to you.
Thank you very much. I note that VCH is coming to us with their capital plan at our next presentation, and just wondering if we might be able to ask them at that time if they're including this in their 5-year plan. And also, I might suggest the Whistler Blackcomb Foundation would be another generous foundation in our community.
Great suggestions. Thank you, Director Jewett. You can totally bring that up with our next delegation in terms of their 5-year capital planning, and a good suggestion with the Whistler Blackcomb Foundation. Director Rainbow, I'll go to you.
I was talking to a doctor who used to run the emergency unit at Lionsgate Hospital about this project, and his comment to me was Lionsgate would support that 100%. And I said, could we get that in writing? He said, absolutely. If you need something in writing, I would, he would facilitate that for us. So my question would be, shall I ask, do we need, or would it be useful to have a letter from physicians at Lionsgate supporting this?
If I can speak, Tony, I've actually already gotten written support from the current leader of the emergency department at Lionsgate, as well as from the current head of radiology at Lionsgate. Both of them are strong supporters of the project. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Fantastic. All right, just going back to Councillor Director Pettingill's question in terms of timeline, and I hear that you don't have anything in writing where we're looking at our current budget cycle and incorporating this into 2023. Does that seem reasonable at this point, although we don't have a specific dollar figure, or is there greater urgency from your perspective?
From a construction point of view, when I spoke with the contractors that did the initial feasibility study, 2023 was very reasonable for them. 2023 is frankly, from an emergency medicine point of view, too late. But there's nothing we can do to move that faster. But certainly, it absolutely has to happen by 2023. Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I may just move that this request be referred to the 2023 budget deliberations, and hopefully by then we will have a clear idea of what that exact dollar figure is. And then we can, the board at that time can discuss what the options in terms of long-term borrowing versus taxation and so on and so forth. So I'll move that this request be moved to the 2023 budget. I have a seconder. Seconded by Director Rainbow. Any further comments? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you again, Dr. Cranston, for the update and for being here this morning.
Thanks, everybody, for your time. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, we are on to item 3.2, and we have the regional director from of asset management and planning, Johan Maris, as well as Mr. Arthur, Chief Project and Officer, Executive Director for Vancouver Coastal Health, talking about capital planning. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Arthur. I'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself and your colleague and go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Hello there, everyone. Good morning. My name is Chris Arthur. I'm the Chief Project Officer and Exec Director for Vancouver Coastal Health, Coastal Community of Care. So that is the geography north of the Burrard Strait, so North Shore, Sea to Sky, and the Sunshine Coast up to Bella Bella and Bella Coola. So pleasure to see you all. And my colleague Johan from our finance division will be running through the presentation. So over to you for intros and slides, Johan.
Thank you very much. Good morning. And thank you very much for accommodating us within today's agenda. So I'll get right into the presentation. The aim is to provide you with an update on the capital plan for fiscal 23 ongoing. And then in addition to that, also make a cost share request to your board at this point. Next slide, please. Just want to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Thank you. Next. Aligning our capital plan and our priorities with our strategic goals, which are exceptional care, innovation for impact, and a great place to work. By exceptional care, how we link that is by replacing some of our outdated infrastructure and equipment with more modern facilities, tools, and technology where we can to enable clinical providers to achieve better outcomes for our patient population. The innovation for impact, our new facilities and equipment embraces evidence-based best practices and enable service providers to provide care, innovative and forward-thinking. And a great place to work, new projects and facilities upgrade will be designed to enable staff to do their work in efficient, safe, and thoughtful environment. Over to the next slide, please. This is just a view to kind of show you where VCH's capital plan really touches on basically everything, the capital plan right in the middle, that is governed by the rules. That would be our capital policies, which includes the ones for VCH, Ministry of Health, and even Treasury Board for some of our larger projects. We have a lot of restrictions around our funding. Secondly, we have to meet audit requirements and accounting standards in the way that we practice. And then the impact that our capital plan have on the operating budget or the operating plan. Stakeholders include the government, management and senior executive team, physicians, staff, the VCH PHC boards, public, the public, the patients and the residents, and then our important funding partners, of which you are one. Around the pressures, and I think some of the ones that I really want to highlight is our aging infrastructure that is crippling us in many ways and very, very costly. Technology changes in e-health is another one. The focus is very clearly on planetary health, indigenous health, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as we go through some of our priorities and setting those for this fiscal and the future. The next slide, please. Just realizing, sorry if I go too fast, but I know there's a time limitation here to be respectful of your time. So the capital planning principles in general is operational sustainability, the asset condition, which in generally we refer to as the FCI or the Facility Condition Index, indigenous health, planetary health, diversity, equity, and inclusion. To the next page, please. Thank you. Vastly speaking, this is just a summary of the facilities that falls within VCH, PHC. It's the 12 hospitals, 12 long care facilities, 6 mental health and substance use facilities, and several primary and community support services, which is spread across in various communities from Richmond right up to Bella Coola. The major projects that we are working on at the moment, specific to you, is the Hilltop House long-term care expansion project, which is currently still in a business case development phase. Over to the next slide, please. This gives you a brief summary of some of the facilities that fall within the Health Authority. Just a bit of a visual. Over to the next slide. Our clinical equipment, we on average are spending about 40 million a year. And we seriously have an historic lack in investing in our large equipment items. So for a number of years, we've now been in a break-fix mode where we really focus on prioritizing the most critical items to be replaced. Unfortunately, we are relying very, very heavily on our hospital foundations and auxiliaries for their support on some of our larger pieces of equipment. And again, to the right, that small little graph gives you an indication of the amount that we are receiving on an annual basis from hospital foundations. The next slide, similar to the facilities one, is just to give you basically an overview of the type of equipment that we procure on an annual basis in various facilities to enable us to keep it modern, keep the lights on, and provide excellent care to our patient population. Over to the next slide, please. The graph to the left is just an outline of our IMITS investment over the years, and you can clearly see a dip that's starting in 08-09, fiscal 09 here, and that was as we were going into the economic downturn, and slowly we have then moved into a large investment with our CST, or Clinical and Systems Transformation project. Most of the infrastructure work that we are doing at the moment is to support that rollout of CST within each one of our facilities. The next slide, please. This is a indication of our total capital spend, the actuals for the past couple of years, which is drastically jumping as we are getting into fiscal 23. Some of the larger drivers within that cash flow is the new St. Paul's Hospital, the Lionsgate Tower, the Richmond redevelopment project, and then the Vancouver General Hospital OR renewal project. And currently from our long-term care facilities, as you've seen on the previous couple of pages back, there's quite a number of them. Dogwood Long-Term Care is the one that is currently underway. The next slide provide a summary of our total projected cash flow, which is 777.6 million, and how we intend to spend that. Right at the top, the very large one is the new St. Paul's Hospital, which is under construction. And then towards the bottom, we give you a breakdown of facilities, equipment, IMITS, and minor capital improvement projects. Everything from New St. Paul's to the Richmond Hospital project are the cash flows associated with those individual projects for fiscal 23. Over to the next slide, please. This is just a quick review of the criteria that we use as we are going through the prioritization process, which essentially started around November of last year and ended up with a board approval early in May. I'm not going to focus on this at the moment, but I think strategic alignment is right across all the programs. Safety is very, very important, and then human resources very, very critical as well. Over to the next slide. This is the capital plan in a snapshot, a summary page of it. The 777.6 million, which is broken down between our total priority investments, which you can see is the bigger portion of it, the 568,000. The items highlighted in green are the new additions of capital projects, new funding, in other words, that we have added to fiscal 23 for 133.3 million. Everything else that you see on the sheet is actually being approved, underway from prior years, including the large projects, the priority investment ones. Over to the next slide. That is a little bit of a deeper breakdown of our various funding sources. The top section being the Ministry of Health. followed by land sales, which was generated from Providence, the Providence lands, and the Dogwood Pearson lands in Vancouver. The other funding sources, very, very important to us. The hospital foundations, regional hospital districts, research, and then the DBF financing component there is just a delivery mechanism for the New St. Paul's project as one of the funding sources. And the next slide provides you with a little bit of a deeper view on the priority investment projects, which is really a slight bit of a repeat of what we've seen on a previous page for each one of those. And lastly, if you can move forward for me to the next page, thank you very much. Then we come to the cost share requests, where we are requesting a 40% contribution from you towards these three projects. The first one being the addition of a washroom in the Squamish General Hospital. As you can see on the right-hand side, the outline, there is no washroom at the moment, and our post-op patients, it's not an ideal situation as they have to move and use adjacent washrooms to the area. So we feel pretty important that that's a critical project to move ahead. The lab and the medical imaging departments, we need to replace the 20-year-old cooling units within those departments. And then lastly, on the lands itself at Squamish General Hospital, there is an ask to replace the paving and the draining, fix the draining around the parking and laneway adjacent to Squamish General Hospital. So our total project cost is roughly 600,000, of which we are making a request to you to fund 239,600 of that total project cost estimate. So that concludes my presentation to you, and open to any questions from you.
Thank you for the presentation and for being here today. I'll go to Director Rainbow first. Director Rainbow, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry about that. Simple question. I was looking at your ask for us there, and I didn't see anything on there about a CT scanner, and it's been clearly brought to us by physicians in Squamish that that's a high priority item for them. It's a critical thing that needs to be in place. It's not just a, well, it would be nice to have one of these. It's something we absolutely have to have. It's a request that's supported by physicians here, by physicians in Lionsgate Hospital. So I'd just like a response to that, please. Why isn't it there?
Sir, it hasn't made the cut in terms of when we went through the prioritization process. Unfortunately, there were other items that were deemed much higher in its priority. It will definitely, I'm aware of it. I think leadership is aware of the challenge that we're dealing with there, and will be addressed, but not right at the moment.
I think if I could add, Johan, I think it's
please. Thank you.
We have done some feasibility studies to look at how we would provide the CT scanner within the hospital. It's quite complex. There's not a lot of space there, so that was quite a detailed piece of work, and also to provide a reasonably accurate estimate for the cost, which, as I'm sure you appreciate, in the current climate is fairly significant. So we have begun physical work in developing that project, and as Johan says, this prioritization last year was based on directed to the three projects that you've just seen, but For a new CT scanner, we will have to go through a business plan process with the ministry because of the level of cost, and that is in progress.
Just if I may
Director Rainbow,
follow up
yeah.
there. So when you say it's in progress, could we be assured is probably too strong a word, but could that be included in next year's budget and then into the financial plans for 2023?
Well, I think if it's approved by our VCH board and the ministry, then I think it would be, would it not, Johan?
Yeah, that's correct. So it will likely be in next year's cycle, which means we really start the prioritization process around the October-November timeframe.
All right, I see Director Pettingill. Go ahead.
Yes, thanks. And so that prioritization process, it starts in October, November, or that's when we know the outcomes?
That's typically when we start. So in all honesty, we are really continuously prioritizing projects. Thank you. Yeah. So it's an ongoing process that gets formalized around the October-November timeframe as we getting ready for the next cycle of funding available to us.
So I think what I'm hearing then is realistically, this would happen 2024 at the earliest from that perspective. And is that accurate?
That is probably accurate, as Chris has stated. There is a business plan that needs to be developed. There is still work ongoing to define the project in its entirety.
Okay, thanks. And just looking at the prioritization of capital prioritization criteria,
yes.
I see urgencies under capital projects, but major clinical equipment doesn't seem to have urgency. And I guess what I'm wondering, we've just seen the census. I know in Squamish, since last census, we've seen a 22% growth rate. I can't remember what our regional growth rate is, but it's quite high. And so I'm wondering how or if that sort of very sudden and quick growth in population impacts how you prioritize where the spending needs to go.
There are many factors that's being looked at through the prioritization, but I cannot explicitly tell you that it is tied to population growth.
Okay,
question, Director Pettingill?
No, that's good for now, Chair. Thank you.
I have a question. The list that you've come forward with the request for cost sharing, there are 3 projects. Are those the only 3 capital projects that are being pursued in the Sea to Sky corridor in this budget cycle? Or are there others and these are just the ones you're looking for cost sharing?
These are just the ones where we are looking for cost sharing. There are other minor capital projects underway. There is also equipment purchases that's occurring, which is not. So these are the only 3 that we are bringing forward to you at this point.
And then my other question is, we've long heard about a master planning process for the Sea to Sky corridor that BCH was undertaking. It was delayed by COVID and we still haven't had an update in terms of the timeline there. And I'm curious where that project is sitting, and it's so critical to informing our capital investments and how healthcare is being delivered, especially in rapid changing and rapid growing communities. And so do we have a sense of when that master planning project could be completed?
Chris, I think I'm going to ask if you could address that one. Thank you.
I can't give a timeline, I'm afraid, but I can say categorically that our leadership of VCH is aware of those issues that you've just mentioned, and that I'm not aware of the timeline, but it is most definitely on the agenda.
See, Director Richmond, go ahead.
Thanks. Just building on some of the comments, and Mr. Arthur, I don't think you've been here at these presentations before, but last year at this time, we very explicitly said we were struggling with how to support funding when we don't have that master plan. We said we didn't want to move ahead with any funding support until we had that master plan in place. Now, we all understand that there's been a pandemic and lots of strains on the system, so we get that. But I'm a little disappointed to hear that leadership is aware that we want to do this master planning project. This is critical to how we support healthcare delivery in our corridor. Director Stoner's question about other projects, there's a few other minor ones in Squamish, and Mr. Pettingill's question about population growth. It seems like there's a lot of investment being focused in Lionsgate, in St. Paul's, in other parts of VCH, and we're not matching what's happening here in our corridor. We need to build SGH up. We need a master plan to support that's informed by the population growth, and that will help us make decisions around funding, and we're still not getting that. So we're going to be leaving this presentation. Thank you for the presentation. This isn't on you, but we're going to be leaving again, having a conversation where we're not sure how to proceed, because the projects that you've listed in my mind all sound very valuable and critical to deliver, and those are the sorts of things we like to support. However, it's really hard to know where to put our taxpayers' dollars in the big picture when we haven't done this master plan, and we just still have the same system of please help us with this project, and that's how we go about funding. Doesn't make sense to us. We've been asking for this for years. Please pass this message on. I know there's a new I know Sean's moved
Near
along.
Chief, yep.
Yeah, and we haven't met yet, so I think that's the next step here, because we need to understand where healthcare is going in our corridor and how we could support it. So that's where we're at on it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'll be sure to pass that message on.
All right, to the board, any further questions for our delegation? Yeah, go ahead, Director Rainbow.
I just want to go back to that CT scanner. And I appreciate the comments that Director Richmond just made. We do need that master plan. But to go back to the CT scanner, we're hearing from our local physicians that is a high priority for them. It's something that they wanted in place for this year. It should have been in place by now, but 2023 is almost too late, as an expression that was used. And now we're saying, well, maybe 2024. And I don't think that's good enough. I think we need to move ahead with that. We need to be able to keep the physicians we've got. We need to be able to attract new ones. And we'll only attract new physicians into somewhere like Squamish if we've got up-to-date modern equipment and modern diagnostic tools. So this is not just a sort of a little wish list kind of a thing. It's a critically important part of the care that we should be able to provide here. And I would like to see us moving ahead a little quicker on that. Maybe when you've gone, maybe we can come up with some sort of a resolution to send a letter to you to express that opinion. But I can't say it strongly enough. We need to move faster than you're proposing.
Mr. Rainbow, no, thank you very much for that input. We really do hear you.
Director Richmond, is that a new hand or a remaining hand?
Very old hand.
Old hand, all right. So to the board, there is a request for consideration of capital project cost share requests. I don't know if anybody is willing to put any of those forward. You can consider some of them, all of them, none of them at this time, but I'd like to move up to a resolution. If anybody wants to move any of those forward to budget.
I'd like to have further conversation with all of the board. Are any of these projects critical on the timeline right now? Can we have a conversation with the whole board on this?
I don't think that a decision is immediate. I think we can, and this might be a question for our delegates, if there's a time sensitivity for our decision to your budgeting process, or if we can refer this to the broader board and come back to you with a decision.
If you can come back to us with a decision, that we greatly appreciate it. We would, however, stress that we would like to move forward with these projects imminently. So it will be appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Appreciate your time today and for being here.
Thank you.
I know it's a difficult project and there's lots to prioritize. Capital investment, I think over the years has been waning across multiple types of government infrastructure, including healthcare. I think as my colleagues have mentioned in their comments and their questions, we continue to be challenged by not having a master planning process that helps to identify where we actually put our dollars. And really direct our work. We don't have a huge tax base. It's a big ask. And we've always seen, I think this board has always seen that we are here to support kind of those high priority areas for our community and not necessarily just subsidize the provincial requirements for delivering healthcare. And so that's where we always balance our decision making in terms of where we put our funding to these cost share requests. But appreciate your time today and thank you for being here, and we'll get back to you with a decision.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Director Richmond, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just didn't want to entertain any motions with our with our panel still there, and I'm happy to look at some of the funding requests as a board right now, or to defer to another meeting when we want to look at all of our identify priorities in one go. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I think this group has the opportunity to have a quick conversation if that's what we want. Like I say, the asks this year are actually more modest than they have been in the past. I think they recognized what's gone on for the last year, so they didn't come in with a lot of big asks. I mean, they all make sense to me. I look at the washroom, to me that's an essential. The replacement systems, item number 2 there, to me that should be just an operational, something that's dealt with through the budget normally. So I have questions and thoughts on all of them. They all seem very relevant. It's not as big an ask as usual. I'm happy to discuss with this group whether we want to agree to some funding right now, or do we want to defer to the next meeting with a bit of a summary on some of our priorities.
So I'm cognizant of time and we still have to go back to the board meeting. So my suggestion might be that we refer this to a future meeting of the hospital district where we can have a more fulsome discussion with Director LaFrance about how much money we have set aside, the impact of the CT scanner and the requests and their validity in a broader board discussion at a future hospital district meeting.
Sounds great. I will make a motion. Do you want a motion to that effect?
That would be great.
Okay. We refer this conversation to the upcoming SSXRD board meeting.
Second that.
Seconded by Director Rainbow. Any further comments? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pettingill. Sorry, Director Pettingill.
Just the one thing that crossed my mind hearing Dr. Cranston is it sounds like from VCH, the obstacles, the funding, seems like there's lots of community interest in this. Is this one where we just say, look, we'll just get it done and we won't rely on VCH? And is that the path to go? And I'd be interested to hear what the board has to say about that at the next meeting.
Yeah. Director LaFrance, I saw you pop up. Do you have something you'd like to add?
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh, no. Oh, good. All right. Thank you for the comments, Director Pettingill. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. We have CAO verbal update 4.1. Anything from the CAO?
No, nothing, Chair.
All right, thank you. And then an information report on the Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District 2021 audited financial statements. Director LaFrance, do you have any comments on this item?
Yeah, so it's just the same financial statements that you viewed at the last meeting with the BDO auditor's report added, as they don't add this report until after the board has approved the statements. So they're in essence the same statements.
All right, thank you very much. Motion, any questions on that? Go ahead, Director Rainbow.
No, I'm sorry. I have another question, but not on that.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to receive. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Pettingill. Any comments? Thank you so much, Director LaFrance, for your work on getting us the audited report. I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Decision on late business. Is your question about late business, Tony?
Well, as I mentioned it when that delegation was here, the possibility of writing to them now, and I wonder if we would consider doing that. If the rest of you agree with me that CT scanner is an extremely important.
I appreciate the sentiment. I believe that the chair and the vice chair have an upcoming meeting with the new COO. So that they will be able to bring up our frustrations, both with the master planning process, as well as the urgency on the CT scanner and a few other items. So I think we can wait and hear back from their meeting, which I believe is in a few weeks' time. And then if there's further advocacy required in form of letter writing, then we can consider it at a later date. Is that sufficient?
Fair enough. That's fine. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So decision, no late business. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Pettingill. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. This meeting is now done.